The story begins at a festival during which there was a seemingly endless rain, heralding sorrowful events. For the main character, this period reminded him of a man created by heaven, always striving for perfection. He stood over the grave and remembered this man, someone who wore his title with honor and always acted according to principles, using fears to know his true I. The boy remembered how this old man had forced him to learn the 4 lessons of Leofan when he was younger, and he still hated him for it. But now that the master was gone, the hero remembered his predicted fate. Tomorrow he would die. The young man was sure that he would never forget what this man had done for him, and he did not want him to be disappointed in him. Lee gazed sadly at the jade pendant in his hand, left to him by the missing master. The boy left the cemetery with a promise that he would take care of it, because it was all he had left of the old man. He rode his bicycle in the rain, and thought that if he survived, he would definitely visit his husband next year. But fate dictated its own rules. A few moments later, a huge truck crashed into the boy, throwing him into the air. The collision shattered his jade pendant into small particles, which began to be enveloped by an eerie aura. The bicycle was also damaged, and books and notebooks were scattered across the sidewalk. At that moment, in one of the buildings, a dark aura began to envelop a wooden doll lying on the table. The wounded Lu Li remembered the old man, and thought that fate had finally caught up with him. And this was finally the end. The next moment, the boy's body began to turn over wood, giving off an ominous aura. Lee immediately guessed that it was a jade pendant left by an old man, giving it a second chance. The guy headed towards the house, around which were many people lying unconscious. The man in the building was incredibly scared of Lu Li. He didn't understand how it was possible that the young man was still alive. In a frightened voice, he begged the hero not to approach, assuring him that he did not want to harm him. As Lee approached, the man began to beg for mercy and promised to reform. The hero guesses why this man made him a scapegoat, but he assures that it is not his fault. Shu accuses Grandpa Fen, assuring that he did not participate in his plans. Lu Li was surprised by the words he heard, and he remembered the events that had happened the day before. That day, the boy met Grandpa Fen, who had studied medicine for about 50 years and knew something about Vanzi. At the first meeting, the old man said that you can never know in advance what the person in front of you is really like. Fen was impressed by Lu Li's divine appearance. He assumed that his master had incredible abilities and asked the boy if he could introduce them. A man from the house interrupted their conversation, unhappy that they hadn't finished talking yet, and reminded the old man that he hadn't invited the young man to talk to him. He was eager to know if Lee's fate was strong enough, and if he could endure the disaster in his place. Fen replied that this guy had a gift from heaven itself, which was used to bear other people's troubles. He considered it a gift from the gods. And he added that if he could take a few drops of Lee's blood as medicine, it would help Second Master Shu fully recover in less than 3 days. The white-haired man asked why he wanted the boy to do all the work for him, because if he was sick, he could just go to the hospital. The hero emphasized that they would not get his blood and reminded him of his master's words. After these words, the man's expression changed sharply to a mocking one. He pointed out to Lu Li that his old man had turned away 34 years ago and said that it was time to forget about his grandfather. The boy reported that before his death, the master had asked them, father and son, to harm girls less and do more good deeds. But Shu considered this a delusion. He laughed at the words about virtue, because he thought that money could buy any beauty, and if it didn't work out, then he just needed to put in a little effort. The young man was disappointed that the man did not want to admit his guilt even now, and thought that he had just fallen ill. The sick man thought Li was a fool if he really believed that he would admit everything. Zhu was about to leave and then said that he could find hundreds of people like Li without any help and advised the guy to stop acting like a moralist. It annoyed him. He recalled that he had seen the boy's antics in Zhuaiman and emphasized that his patience would not last forever. Then he turned to Fen and informed him that they were leaving. Before leaving, the master told Li not to let such little things affect him. The young man cast a frightened glance at the couple who were moving away from him, and he was especially alarmed by the old man. The guy felt something trying to break out from under his Olympic jersey in the chest area. It was a jade pendant left to him by the master. For some unknown reason, he reacted right then. Lee took the pendant in his hands and thought deeply about something. The young man remembered this event right away because it explained a lot. The hero looked at Master Shu and said that he had found the answer as expected. Now he knew the time when the curse was placed on him. Bending to the floor, the man announced that when Master Fen said he was looking for someone who was versed in the mystical arts and had a strong destiny, he immediately thought of Lee. And he added that when the old man found out that the boy's master was Chenda, he continued to insist on meeting the young man in person. After these words, the man's body began to be enveloped by a curse. He screamed in pain and begged Lu Li for help. Both he and the people outside had the same marks, which meant they were also cursed. Looking around, Li assumed that none of them had survived after the curse took effect. However, one thought haunted the boy. If they were under the same spell as him, then why was he still alive? Nearby, the rain washed the man's hands, which waved a round medallion. This gesture made Lu Li shudder from the unpleasant sensation spreading through her body. The boy's skin began to heat up rapidly, and it felt as if there was a ball of fire inside his body. The next moment, Li found himself directly inside the building and realized he had been intoxicated by an illusion. The young man guessed that someone had used the blind eye technique on him. The hero immediately understood who could have done it. He waved his seals, intending to break the illusion. The boy aimed his heavenly formation technique at the vision, which dissipated at the same moment. The impressed master noted that the master had taught Li some good techniques, but he added that what he had seen today would be imprinted in his memory for a long time. If it weren't for Second Master Shu, the old man would have lost all his luck. It was on him that Fen was going to use the puppet essence technique. The curse took control of the man's body, and he no longer resembled his former self. The master was going to apply this technique to other subordinates, but Li stopped these attempts, saying that heaven would not teach him this. The young man still didn't understand why the old man decided to attack him, because there was no enmity between them. Fen told the boy that he would tell him everything if he survived. He wanted him to understand that his main puppet was several times better than these walking corpses thanks to one forbidden technique. Grandfather considered it fate that Marionette and Lee ended up in the same place. He was interested in which of them was stronger. The young man mocked the old man for believing that this garbage would stop him. He promised that now he would see everything with his own eyes. Lu Li spread his legs and used the Chen trigram to summon heavenly lightning to the ground. The hero gathered the resulting power in his hand and directed it at the herd of walking corpses in front of him. A lightning spark broke the handle of the umbrella that protected Master Fen from the rain. An enraged Li headed towards the old man, not understanding whether these corpses were truly the result of his 10 years of research. In response, the old man advised the young man not to boast too early because his main trump card had not yet been used in the battle. Li immediately felt the ominous aura of Master Shu approaching him from behind. However, even the unexpected attack could not weaken the guy. With one blow, he stopped his opponent. This attack knocked Master Shu back to the same place from which he was planning to attack. Fen remembered how Yui told him about the 50 paths. 4 or 9 were laid out in the sky, and one of them was hidden. The old man was intrigued by this, so he and Chenda sought help from the heavens in search of an answer. And now, contemplating the Battle of Lu Li, the master was sure that he would soon become just like them. Fen pulled the medallion into his hand. He was incredibly curious to find out what other secrets the blonde was hiding. The old man was going to see if the heir to Chenda could overcome such difficulties to survive. A black car rushed to the scene, from which people in business suits jumped out in chorus. One of the passengers told her fat friend to hurry up. The guy didn't like that she was in such a hurry because he wanted to see everything first. The young man clasped his fingers together in front of him and used the foresight technique. The man reminded his partner that he was also counting on some kind of bonus to pay off his mortgage, so that didn't mean he had to follow her. The fat man did not find a trap in this place and noticed that there were only 3 people near the house. The boy jerked sharply from his spot and shouted to his partner to move faster. He felt 2 auras, the strength of which could not be measured, and told his companions to be more careful. Xiao Moon was surprised by the quantity and suggested that today's catch was many times better than they had expected. Lu Li continued his fight with Master Shu. He rose into the air and reached for his head with his hand. The boy summoned lightning again, hoping it would help him defeat the puppet. The opponent was lying on the ground, and the expression on his face radiated fear and displeasure. Liu understood that lightning had no effect on Yu, so he decided to try another technique and swung his fist straight at his face. A powerful thunderclap struck the place where the two were standing, sending the ground flying in different directions. Fen threw up his medallion, saying that the puppet was a walking corpse, belonging neither to the world of the living nor to the dead. The incense stick in his hands began to emit red sparks that flew to the sides. The old man remarked that the puppet could be compared to the basic tenets of the Tao. It could easily withstand the attack of all 5 elements of the universe. He was surprised that Li thought that ordinary lightning could harm it. The young man looked back and glared at the old man. The boy was annoyed that the old man was talking too much. Master Fen clasped his fingers in front of him and said that the young lamb was not afraid of the tiger. He threatened to show Li what a real puppet he was. After his words, the younger son was about to attack the boy. Magic began to emerge from his body. The boy realized that Master Shu's body was being demonized. After its transformation, the puppet instantly moved from its place and pounced on its opponent. Getting closer, Master Shu swung his hand and hit the boy right in the stomach. Lu Li didn't even have time to react to his attack. The force of the impact threw the boy's body several meters back, into the wall of the house. Lu Li understood that he was now in a very difficult position, because his opponent had almost broken him completely. Master Shu moved from his spot, intending to finish off his opponent, who was already at the limit of his capabilities. However, the puppet failed to carry out its intentions. Xiao Moon attacked him from behind and knocked him to the ground. After the winner got rid of her opponent, she approached the wounded Lu Li. Smiling, the girl looked around, intending to find out who dared to storm into her shift. Fen was impressed by the technique Xiao Moon had just used and admitted that the new generation was not as weak as he thought. The old man began to fantasize about how these people would become new specimens for his experiments. The comrades finally caught up with the girl, who at this time advised her grandfather to finish here faster, and then not complain that the younger generation does not respect the elders. Fen was sorry that his precious puppet gem had become nothing more than a piece of granite. Partner Xiu examined the injured Lu Li. He was shocked at the condition he was in. The old man realized that it was time to retreat. He told the young men that he would continue next time. Tao Moon asked to stay for another minute, but he was indifferent to her words. The girl was annoyed that he was ignoring her, so she started following him with the intention of stopping him. The partner didn't like Xiao's enthusiasm, so he grabbed her by the hood to calm her down. The boy pointed his index finger at Li and said that he was at the center of the puppet curse. From the fighting technique, the young man understood that the old man was the leader of the 6th Niandu detachment, and his name was Fen Yunjai. They understood that it was not worth pursuing the old man now, because he was not someone they could deal with. The man with glasses also said that if his friends did not save Lu Li, he would turn into a monster. The fat man cast a healing spell on the young man, but it only stopped the process for a moment. The comrades need to quickly bring him back to consciousness so they can come up with another way. Xiao Moon was shocked that even her teammates couldn't do anything about this curse. The boys didn't like her discontent, because they were already doing everything they could. The comrades picked up Li to carry him with them and help the boy. Xiao followed them, asking them to tell her what the puppet curse was. The boy began to tell a story about the beginning of time, and Tao Moon asked him to speak normally. He told her about the walking dead, who could be transformed into monsters regardless of gender. In an attempt to get rid of the corpses, the rulers came up with a way. Zhao realized that this meant that Li had been a walking corpse for some time, and her friend confirmed her suspicions and asked her to inform the leadership about this. They had already passed the information on to the Internal Affairs Department and were going to give it to them later. But now they needed to evacuate immediately. But the girl was worried that they were facing a walking corpse. She asked her partner if Sister Anne could stop this guy if he thought of doing something. But he wasn't sure. Lu Li seemed to have a dream with memories of the day the boy received his jade pendant. The master gave his talisman to the boy, but Li felt awkward. Qiande patted him on the head and said that he could call the pendant Super Invincible Liu He Baohan. But the boy said with a displeased expression that he felt like the old man had just made it up. Qiande looked at the baby carefully and warned that when he left, Li would have to take care of himself. He reprimanded him for having invested his entire life in raising the boy, so if the boy wanted to repay him, he should live a full life. But Li objected, because Qiande himself had said that it was better to die immediately than to exist like this. The old man was angered by the tone in which the boy answered him, so the man kicked him for it. He insisted that the boy keep the talisman and never think about losing it, promising that it would one day save his life. Li did not want to continue the conflict, so he did not object. The young man examined the jade pendant again, but found nothing special about it. It seemed like just a stone on a rope. Before leaving, the old man said that this thing would one day help the boy survive a great disaster, and warned that if it did happen, his future fate would depend only on him. Heading towards the gate, he announced that natural disasters are easy to avoid, but man-made disasters are much more difficult to prevent. Qiande looked around and told the boy to behave with restraint. Li was saddened that the master was leaving again and did not understand what he was talking about. Finally, the old man said that he might come back in a few days, or even years. At least he didn't intend to do so until everything was done. From the day the master set off again, the boy heard nothing more about him. The story returns to Master Fen. As the man expected, Lu Li is worthy of being the heir of Qiande. Even half of his dead body can be considered a mystery. Then, the old man looked at Master Shu. An idea arose in his mind. He wanted to know if the missing man could find his son. The master's mortal body was imperfect, and because of this, his strength was quickly depleted. In a creepy tone, Fen said that then there was no point in this man anymore. After these words, he threw the medallion into the air and shattered it into small pieces. As a result of this gesture, Master Shu's life came to an end. The old man looked back and headed away from the scene of the crime. The events moved to the district hospital, Ward 708, where the injured Lu Li was taken after a fight. The guild members were happy when the boy finally came to. He had slept for 3 whole days after the incident. Opening his eyes, Li realized he was in a hospital, but he didn't know who the people in front of him were. Xiaomun immediately bombarded the guy with questions about his identity, but her partner told the girl to stop. He didn't like her asking so bluntly. The young woman ignored him and told Li to ignore the fat man as well. Tao held the document in her hands and, at the doctor's request, handed it to the guy. This was the conclusion of the examination, which was about heart failure. The young man understood that things were getting worse and worse, and it was true happiness that at least he was alive. Xiao insisted that he give his name. Li replied and promised to pay for all medical expenses later. The guy with glasses also introduced himself and said that they were from the Urine Guild. They needed to find out something for their investigation, so they asked how he met Fen Yuzhai and if there was any animosity between them. The only person Li knew was the young master of the Shu family, Shu Shao. He had no idea how he knew that his blood could cure an unknown disease, even though the blond man refused to agree to it. The guy with the glasses noticed that 3 months ago, Li had bought a place in the cemetery for a man named Li Qiande. The young man confirmed this, but he had the feeling that these people were interested in his old man. The guild member assured him that there was nothing to worry about. They were ordered to sort out the situation, and the blonde had seen the old Devil Fen's technique and was able to survive after a fight with him. They were sure he would return and promised to protect Lee. The boy didn't understand what they meant. They explained to him that Jurin was a government organization that monitors unusual activity. All of this is difficult to manage, and that's exactly what their guild is needed for. To influence the ghosts with their help not to cross the line, not to break the law, and at the same time maintain balance in society. The association created 4 directions according to the abilities depicted on the Tao Gate: art, flow, stillness, and movement. The person who could match the masters of the past was the Taoist Qiande. Liu was incredibly surprised to hear his master's name again. He couldn't believe it was the same old man he knew and thought something was wrong. The guild members suggested that if the blonde was indeed the heir to Qiande, then that would explain why the Devil Fen was looking for him. The guy with glasses announced that the art gate originated from the Hetu Loshu script, which is also known as the water and earth techniques. Flow covers various directions, and the pre-Qin period was its heyday. The immovable gate is responsible for the development of the mind and has very few followers, mainly sages and scholars, such as the calligraphy sage Wang Shiji and the enlightened Wang Shuzhen. The physical aspect of the gate is movement. When the elements of earth and water are transformed, all restrictions are removed, and this is movement. This is more relevant to martial arts. Xiang Yu, the royal guard of the Ming dynasty, and members of the Qi family stood out here. He looked at his colleague and announced that Tao Xiaomoon was entering the gates of the movement. Xiao's main technique is 8 blows destroying mountains. Even the human puppet Fen could not withstand this attack. They wanted Li to trust them and asked if Qiande had ever told the boy about the runes. The blonde looked away, apologized, and replied awkwardly that the Taoist they were mentioning was not his master. He added that the old man only said that Li should live a full life, so this was the first time he had heard of the runes. Xiao didn't understand how this was possible because the guild's data couldn't be wrong. The blonde replied that he didn't know how true their information was. Then he got out of bed and announced that it was time for him to go, because missing a couple is a very bad habit for a student. He also noted that they should have a warrant for questioning, and after saying these words, he began to change his clothes right in front of them. Putting on his shirt, the boy said he would pretend as if he hadn't asked them anything. Li did not want to bother them anymore, and assuming that they had no more questions left, was about to leave. Xiao asked him to wait, and before leaving, she gave him the guild's business card. If the boy met the demon Fen again, he would be the first to inform them about it. The blonde took the card and said that if anything happened, they would be the first to know. The guild members could only wait because the Devil Fen was targeting this guy, which indicated his connection to Qiande. Xiao was saddened by the cruelty of heaven, because Li's life would be so short. The partner was surprised that heaven could be used in such a context and asked Xiao if her language teacher was still taking students. The girl immediately understood what he was getting at. She dismissed the guy with the saying that a flower should choose a good host for itself, and a warrior should practice fencing. Tao Moon left the room, leaving her partner alone. Leaving the hospital and with his hands in his pockets, Lu Li headed down the sidewalk to his university, but the world didn't want to leave him alone so easily. After a moment, a black car appeared in front of his figure. A young man in a business suit came out of the driver's cab and asked the boy if his name was Lu Li. He bowed and announced that his boss wanted to meet with the guy and asked if he could spare some of his time. Opening the back door, he assured Li that once he got to the boss, he would understand everything immediately. Then he pointed with his left hand to the back seat and asked the guy to get in the car. This seemed very strange to the blonde man. He couldn't think of anyone who would want to meet him, except for Mr. Shu. They knew the guy was quite perceptive, so the boss ordered him to behave at the highest level. As the young man had already guessed, a subordinate of Master Shu's company came to meet him. The boss was unhappy with the current situation, so he asked his subordinate to kill Lu Li for him. He promised that after he did it, he would pay him well. But the man didn't think it would be easy. What happened a few days ago had become a big deal, and one could guess that Jurin was keeping a close eye on the guy right now, so there was no point in doing anything just yet. But the boss didn't care. He didn't care what methods his subordinate used. He promised him 5 million for it. The manager decided to press the issue, saying that if he didn't do it, his family would be implicated, so the man had no choice but to agree. The boss took out a credit card and handed it over. More than anything, he wanted Lu Li to finally die. The man had a grudge in his heart over his son's death, so he sought revenge and promised that the villain would be buried next to Master Shu. After Lu Li got into the black car, the driver headed out of town along the highway, indicated by the industrial buildings outside the window. The guy understood the situation and reprimanded the stranger that if they continued on, they would end up far from their destination. Li suggested that the driver's boss was not Shu, and asked if he was some Taoist who had attained perfection in the deep forest. The boy reached out to the stranger's shoulder to ask where they were going. But after that movement, his body reacted. He immediately realized that something was wrong. In the car mirror, Li saw the driver's eerie appearance and assumed that this was also a curse that had befallen the people at the scene of their confrontation with Shu and Fen. This man was a ghost, and due to his reincarnation, he began to lose control of his car. The car was slowly drifting sideways all over the road. Li was stuck in it and didn't know how to get out. As a result, the car crashed into the first obstacle and began to fly into pieces. The next moment it flew into the air, leaving behind piles of glass from broken windows. After falling, the car crashed into the ground, causing a strong shockwave around it. Fortunately, Lu Li was able to get out unharmed, scolding himself for being too relaxed. After this incident, the guy realized that many people wanted him dead. Suddenly, wooden beams began to descend from the sky onto the scene, each with a hole at the bottom that looked like a door. They landed right in front of Lu Li, announcing a new possible threat to his life. Another subordinate of the boss walked up to him, whom he asked to deal with the guy. His attention was focused on the smartphone in his hands, where he was playing a game of tower and arguing with his opponent, Mead. Then the guy looked at Li and asked if he was going to do something, or if he had come to surrender immediately. The young man asked the white-haired man's name, and in response he asked who he was and whether they knew each other. It didn't matter to the opponent, he just wanted to finish off Lu Li quickly, because he couldn't wait to buy a new skin with the money he got for his head. The gamer decided not to waste time and released the warriors who came out of the wooden cases. He wanted to end it as quickly as possible with the help of his puppets. Lu Li had not yet fully recovered from the last fight, but these scumbags left him no choice. The opponent manipulated the puppets using a smartphone, controlling them through the game. One of the characters began to release a wooden branch from the ground, aimed at Lu Li. Several puppets crowded around the cornered boy, who was not about to simply back down. The enemy moved from his place and, jumping into the air, intended to strike the boy with his hand. Loi concentrated his strength in his right hand and summoned lightning to his aid, which he had also used in the previous fight. This allowed him to cut off the arm of a wooden puppet with one blow. The gamer realized that his opponent was using the lightning technique, and he became extremely excited about it. Lu Li instantly dealt with the elements with each of his wooden opponents. But company underling Shu wasn't going to just stand by and wait for all his puppets to be killed. He used the Soul Eater technique. Green threads of light that shot from the boy's hands grabbed the heads of each of the wounded dolls. The gamer was sure that now the advantage was on his side, and the lightning element would not affect his subordinates. He said his technique was created specifically to combat self-proclaimed exorcists, like Li. The young man directed a stream of green spears at the man, and the man understood that things were bad. The Thunderlaw was unable to stop the attack, so his body was pierced by the opponent's technique. The gamer rejoiced in his momentary triumph, and was sure that this would be the end of their fight. Terrible feelings of anxiety and hunger enveloped Lu Li's body. He felt as if he had returned to that rainy night, Small clumps of light, resembling fish, absorbed the enemy attack, seeking even more yin power. The man was surprised because he was still alive and realized that the demonic spirit had been absorbed by those fish, and he had another chance. The opponent didn't understand why his technique didn't work on the guy, and then he guessed that he was immune to it. Realizing that things were bad, the gamer decided to turn his back on them as soon as possible. However, Lee was not going to let him go so easily. After the boy started running, he immediately fled the scene. The next moment, he found himself right in front of the figure of a gamer, his head crashing into him. Lu Li told the boy that the battle wasn't over yet, so he shouldn't be in such a hurry. The gamer embarrassedly suggested continuing another time with the excuse that his mother was already calling him for dinner. Lee was outraged that the little boy decided to run away as soon as all his plans went awry. The boy tried to make a fool of him and justified himself by saying that it was all just a joke. The white-haired man grabbed him by the shoulder and ordered him to stop talking nonsense, then asked the gamer how many more spirits he had. The gamer swore he had never even seen them. The young man was irritated by the little man's lie. Lightning could easily kill an evil spirit, so he threatened that he could easily see what would happen if he used it on a human. This frightened the boy, and he admitted that the Thunder Law was very powerful, and in his eyes, it was like God. The gamer was able to control no more than a dozen evil spirits, but he couldn't control them all. Lai was satisfied with this answer, so the young man ordered the boy to summon all the spirits right now and repeat what he had done before. But without any extra tricks, the boy tried to assure him that he wasn't even thinking about attacking him. The man threatened that he would only give him 5 seconds to think, otherwise he would experience electrotherapy treatment. So the gamer had to agree to use the technique. He crossed his legs in Turkish, concentrated, and warned that he would not be held responsible if Lee accidentally died. Like last time, the green glow again directed itself towards the man's body, and it seemed that he had expected this. A small wooden puppet, similar to the ones from before, began to materialize on the floor. In the same place, a pentagram appeared under Lee, and his figure was surrounded by 2 spirits resembling yin and yang. They absorbed all the enemy magic, protecting the man's body from it, and as a result, this attack had no effect on him. Lee sat on the ground and crossed his legs, placed his hands on his knees, and concentrated on his inner feelings. After materializing 10 puppets, the gamer stopped. The man didn't like this and asked him to continue. The boy was upset at the suggestion that Lu Li was using him as a charge for him. Better death than such a reduction. He explained that he really couldn't continue anymore because he had no more spirit left, and asked to be let go home. The little one flinched at Lee's question about whether anyone else in his family used this technique. After hearing this, he began to back down because involving his family was too much. The boy said that even if he couldn't win, he would still fight to the end. Lee was surprised by the gamer's reaction because he had simply asked a question. After the battle, the subordinates hurried to the boss's house to report what had happened. He learned from a friend that Wang Shenliang and his group had just retreated. They managed to learn something about Lu Li, but the operation failed. The man understood the situation and asked to remind everyone that they had 3 days left. He instructed Wang Shenli to be informed that the project to demolish Fangguang Lane had been handed over to him. The boss didn't want him to bother him with visits every day. The man also wanted the enemy to find out about the alley, because if they succeeded, it would be a great chance to kill him. 2 men were returning from a busy evening. One asked his friend Li about a girl he had fond memories of. They also mentioned Fang Guang, and that this would be a great chance to kill Lu Li. The brothers shared their thoughts about destroying that alley, and one suggested that the other take on the task alone, if the other so wished. The men left behind photographs and documents. Then they remembered a story that had once happened. One of the brothers felt as if someone had whispered in his ear that Fanguang was cursed. Lia told how the previous demolition team had been working there for quite some time, until an incident at one of the buildings changed their plans. He stopped talking when he saw his partner looking scared. The brother asked the man if he didn't have a feeling that someone was watching them, and it gave him goosebumps. He even flinched when a hand was placed on his shoulder for no reason. Lee mocked his brother's expression and how scared he was by a simple gesture. He found it funny that even after so many years, he still believed in the paranormal, because in their business, at least you have to be brave. But the man said that he would decide for himself what to believe. Then he suggested that they hurry, because he had a feeling that this place was somehow dangerous. Brother Lee couldn't understand what happened because he had never seen him so scared. Then he pointed his finger at the stranger, wondering what he was doing here, because it was rare to meet anyone here. They came closer and asked him if he was a man or a ghost. The guy replied that it was better not to approach strangers in suspicious places. Brother Lee laughed at the words about suspicious places, because it meant that the stranger also believed in that ghostly nonsense. The man recommended that they follow the advice and not go any further. It would be better to take a different route. But one of the brothers was even more amused and said he would go and show everyone his face. Then he asked if they really thought an evil spirit would jump out of nowhere and kill him. The partner touched the man and asked him to listen to his advice, because it seemed to him that something was wrong in this place. But the brother continued to insist. He had not seen any ghosts, or even a hint of them, so he was not going to bypass the place. In response, Luli ordered him to stop quickly. Such audacity angered the man, so he asked what he was commanding here. But Lee's address was not directed at them. He was speaking to those standing behind the men. The brothers were surprised by what they heard, and looking around, discovered eerie ghosts behind them. Luli looked around and again advised the men to just leave from here by another road. Incredibly frightened by the appearance of ghosts, they finally decided to listen to his words. After that, the brothers abruptly left the scene, begging for help and reporting ghosts. In this commotion, Luli finally remembered that he needed to pay back the treatment money to those young men from the guild. It was at this moment that he remembered the films about a man created by heaven, who always strived for perfection, wore his title, and acted according to principles, and continued to observe even in another world. These were lines from The 4 Lessons of Liao Fan. Every time Luli thought of the old man, they would come to his mind. Now the boy didn't know who he could trust. Finally, he reached the place he was heading for. Stopping, he commanded the yin eye to open. Now Lee could see all the ghosts that filled the place, their faces radiating joy at having a new victim. More and more of them appeared, and they all turned their gaze towards the stranger. No wonder there was such an unpleasant atmosphere here. Lee was afraid that in a few days this place could really turn into a cemetery. He pulled out a white powder from his bag and began to sprinkle it around the area. Lee did this with the aim of feeding the ghosts and capturing them, and he was going to release them after they helped him find a guy. The spirits rushed at the powder in unison, eating it with great appetite. They were in a hurry to eat it all, but the boy knew that there should be enough for everyone. Once the ghosts had had their fill, Lu Li intended to take them with him to find a certain guy. The next moment, his attention was drawn to something else happening in the vicinity. In the corner of one of the walls sat a boy with a girl who had moved closer to his body. Lee wasn't sure if the couple were okay. The ghost called the girl Sister Yo and asked her to be gentler with him. His body could no longer resist. It seemed like this girl was harassing him. The boy didn't like it at all. He was begging for help, so Lu Li couldn't help but pay attention to this couple. After finishing, Luo admitted that such a pure essence was truly mind-blowing. Then she noticed that they were being watched. She wasn't going to stop and reached out to the boy again, but he begged her to stop. Lear couldn't just watch from the sidelines, so he ordered the girl to stop. The girl asked him if he had also come for this boy. The boy guessed that it was Luo who had gathered so many evil spirits in one place, but he didn't understand why she wasn't afraid. She replied that her younger brother had asked her the same thing, and that it was all for the sake of the weak little Lun. Li knew that no matter how good the girl's skin was, it was simply impossible to hide that foul smell. Luo took out the seal and read the conspiracy with the power of heaven and earth. She forced the ghosts to obey her. The girl summoned hundreds of previously captured ghosts to help her attack the boy. The creepy spirits rushed at Lee in droves with the order to eat him, but there was no surprise on the young man's face. He prepared to fight them off, also taking up the seal to use his technique. Finally got a chance to show off his updated thunderbolt, called Omega Shock. With one blow, Lu Li illuminated the entire place with his lightning, defeating the evil ghosts. Sister Luo was shocked that all of her already dead warriors were defeated so quickly. The boy in the corner of the wall was shocked by what he had just seen. Luo quickly jumped away from the boy onto the roof. She admitted that this time she had a strong opponent. However, after a moment, the girl's expression changed because she even found this situation funny. Before leaving, Luo told the boy not to even think about dying because she wasn't finished with him yet. Lee glanced at the little ghost, who was very scared, and begged him not to come near because he had done nothing wrong. The man was surprised to see such an expression on his face and asked if he looked like a bad guy. The teenager still doubted that he would be harmed. Lee told him to forget the question and assured him that he had nothing to do with children. After that, the man asked the boy if his name was Hao Hao and said that he had come at the request of his mother, who was very sad. The teenager sadly replied that ever since his mother became pregnant with his younger brother, she had stopped taking care of him, and when he ran away from home, he had hoped that they would look for him. But his parents didn't even notice. Lee leaned over and asked Hao Hao if he remembered what happened after he ran away. The boy replied that he had been waiting for them on the street for a long time, and even wanted to go back. But he couldn't find his way back. In his search, he went out onto the road, and that very day he was hit by a car. Hao Hao sadly asked Lu Li if he was really dead now, and wandering here like a lost soul. The man gently replied that even if the boy had a younger brother or sister, he would always be a real treasure to his mother. Lee pulled out a photo of a woman with a child from his pocket. It was Hao Hao's mother, who firmly believed that the boy had returned from the other world, so she named the baby in his honor. The teenager was surprised to learn such news because his mother had previously said that she did not want him to be born. Lee let the boy look at the photo more closely and relayed the mother's words that her youngest son was as cute as Hao Hao was as a child. The boy thanked the white-haired man for telling him everything. Now he had no regrets or resentment left. The man asked Hao Hao if he wanted to see his parents, but Hao Hao knew that he would only scare them, so he decided not to bother them again. In fact, Lee didn't tell the little boy the whole truth. That day, it was his stepfather who was driving, and he gave his pregnant wife a villa to make amends. He told the boy that he would take him to a Taoist temple and send him into the circle of reincarnation during the next Qingming festival. Lee started to move him to the potty, thinking that teenagers weren't stupid. On the contrary, they knew a lot about adult life. It's just that Hao Hao didn't want to remember what he wanted so badly not to remember, and maybe to let his mother live happily. He will have to forget about her. Leaving this place, Lee watched the dawn that many people will never see again. The morning sun illuminated the gates to the temple, where the hero arrived after completing the mission. There he performed a ceremony with candles and a pot, preparing Hao Hao's soul for the cycle of rebirth. During this, he received a message on his mobile phone from Wangshen Li. He thanked him for the work done and suggested that they have a drink together. The boy's attention was drawn from his correspondence by an unexpected knock on the temple door. Li went to open the door and told the person who arrived that tourists were not allowed to enter the temple. Standing at the entrance was Xiao Moon from the Yuan Guild. She asked if she really looked like a tourist. Luo arrived at the base, a dilapidated building where she and her teammates were meeting for coordination. The boy who had been fighting with Lu Li entered the building, turned to the girl, and informed her that he had brought everything she had asked for. So he intended to see Dahe. Luo stood in front of a table with a candle burning on it and a wooden case hanging above it. The young man saw that Dahe was hanging motionless and asked the girl how she could behave like that. Luo reprimanded the boy for being the first to dare to treat people like pets. She explained that the puppet in front of him was not just a brainless wax figure. If a guy doesn't want their village to turn into a real ghost town, then he should listen to his sister, that is, to her. The young man understood her words and replied that if she wanted him to obey her, no problem, but she would have to give him some time to complete the task. At first, Luo wanted the boy to give her what he had brought, and then she was going to listen to his request. He returned all the souls of the boys he had used to her, but informed her that Lu Li had drawn all the evil spirits out of him. But it didn't matter to the girl, because she got what she wanted. After that, Luo let him go. But before leaving, the young man reminded her of his desire to buy a new skin in the game. The sister didn't understand the point of getting carried away by such a meaningless game. Then she leaned over and asked if she could offer something more interesting. But the gamer didn't want to agree to such an offer and asked the girl if she was going to touch him. The woman gave him a crazy look and asked where he got such self-confidence. Taking the bag of spirits, Luo reminded them that they had agreed to exchange Lu Li's body for Dahe's, but the guy hadn't kept his end of the bargain. He reprimanded them for not being warned that he wasn't afraid of dark magic. The gamer asked how much money he was getting for today, and the girl wondered how he dared to blame others for his helplessness. The upset guy lowered his voice and hesitantly replied that that was not what he meant at all. Luo pulled the bag towards her and said that she was giving the guy 2 more days to complete the task. She threatened that if the gamer didn't cope, his dahe would become a great snack for her ghostly friend. The teenager was seriously scared when he looked at the spirit that jumped out from behind the girl. He awkwardly agreed to the 2-day arrangement and then headed for the exit. Luo looked at Mr. Fen and reprimanded that the guy made almost no sense and asked why they didn't just kill him. The old man stepped towards her and tried to assure her that there was nothing to worry about, because this young man was not as simple as she thought. He began the story by saying that the most powerful spell in the world is emotions. It's easy to admit that the most dangerous enemy is the one who pretends to be your friend. The master said that a stone dropped into water causes waves, so they should wait until they calm down. Events flash back to Lu Li. The guy didn't expect to meet Xiaomun so soon. She wondered if he was happy to see her. He was curious as to how they knew he was here. The guild member assured him that it didn't matter and asked how he lived alone in such a huge Taoist temple and if he was lonely here. Lai replied that it was personal. The girl changed the subject and mentioned that she had seen him fight that chicken. Liu Xin, the white-haired man, asked her to stop and asked for what purpose she had come to visit him. As it turned out, Xiaomun and Lu Li died at the same time. The girl wanted him to take her to the master. She was certain that the master must be here and asked him to tell her about the supernatural abilities of their Tiende. The white-haired man suggested that if she just wanted to learn, he didn't understand why it had to be so complicated. Li suspected that the guild doubted his old man's identity, so he first asked him to tell him about their Tiende. Xiao enthusiastically replied that she knew a lot, that the master had been beaten many times, suffered from depression, and his car had flat tires. But the boy was interested in more serious things. The young man simply asked to answer his questions. The first were what the master's real name was, whether they had any photographs of him, what kind of art he practiced, and what his physical parameters were. Xiao sincerely replied that Tiende was her idol. Even the chairman himself had no right to verify information, so what could be said about her? Otherwise, she wouldn't have come to Li. What alternative did the guy offer? Just shoot himself in the head and die, and then meet his master in the afterlife and ask if he was the one they were looking for. Shai called the fat man from the guild to ask why she had disappeared again. To appease his anger, the girl asked him to go on a date. And just a few minutes after hearing what he had said, the guy from Durin was at the entrance to the temple. He really thought that Zhao had asked him out, but in reality she was just slacking off from work and breaking the rules. The fat man risked losing his job while she was talking to the suspect. Recently, the entire Zhu Corporation family was found dead. The time of death was about 24 hours ago. According to the evidence obtained, Lu Li is the first on the list of suspects. Everything was quite confusing. Perhaps it was a motivated murder, which is why the police entrusted the case to them. Fortunately, Everyone he needed was in the temple, so they saved him a lot of time and effort. The guy turned to the couple and asked them to get in the car. The case was very troublesome. It was accompanied by a note left by the deceased before his death, and all the evidence pointed it to Lu Li. They were heading to the scene of the incident, and the blonde man should have been there too. The guild member emphasized that if it wasn't known that the boy had been in Fangguang Lane the previous night, the conversation with him would have been completely different. He recalled the monster that the white-haired man had fought a few days ago. It was the only son of Old Shu, the second young master, Shao. Xiao was surprised to hear this story. She didn't understand why the only child was called the second and not the first. His partner didn't answer her question, so the girl asked what was the matter and why he was ignoring her. The guild member was more concerned about what the second young Mr. Shu had to do with this matter, how their family had come into contact with Fen Yuzhai in the first place. Shai was intrigued by these questions, and she was eager to know if her friend knew the answers to them. But after such a senseless question, the guy felt as if he had suddenly become dull. They finally reached the scene of the murder, near which other guild members were already present. Lu Li had to get close enough to feel the terrifying aura of this estate. The frightened woman, sitting on the floor and hiding her face behind her hands, tried to prove that she had not lied in her testimony. With tears in her eyes, she recalled the events that had happened the previous night, right in front of her. The maid, as usual, was about to bring the master his dinner, not suspecting what was about to happen. But when she opened the door, the picture she saw made her quite scared. Her master, surrounded by clots of dark magic, lay on the floor and uttered the name Lu Li. He blamed the boy for all his troubles and promised to cut off his head. However, he would not be able to do so now, as his body was taken over by a curse. Unable to control his body but capable of speaking, Shu Hu repeated that Lu Li would die the most cruel death. After these words, his hands turned his face away in fear. The maid couldn't even say a word, so she just watched. The woman witnessed her master twist his head so that it fell off. Caught in panic, she didn't have time to react to the fact that the killer was still in the house. The maid was aware that he was standing right behind her, but she was incredibly scared. Then, when she was able to speak again, she looked back and ordered the scumbag not to come near her. In response, the attacker knocked out the maid, causing her body to fall to the floor. The woman continued to assure the detective that her words were true and that she was not making anything up. So far, no body parts of Shu Hu have been found. The investigators have contacted President Ma, and they have been provided with police dogs, but even they have not found anything. The deceased was a local businessman, and they understood that his death would bring many new problems. At this time, the guild members brought the main suspect in this case, Lu Li, to the detective. The white-haired man didn't know what to think, because after he got out of the car, he had a feeling as if someone was following him, as well as an inexplicable anxiety. So the guy decided that no matter what, he would just take a quick look around. This place looked like some kind of province, and upon looking closer, the blonde man had the feeling that someone had hidden the details from his eyes. President Ma looked at the guy and asked if this was really the Lu Li everyone was talking about. The guild member reported that everyone had been gathered and wanted to know what to do next. The man replied that it already depended on the testimony of suspect number 1. President Ma decided it would be better to explain everything to Lu Li while they were leaving. He noticed that Xiao Moon had also come, so he advised them to remember that fighting at the scene was prohibited. The girl, with a smile, advised the boss not to be so serious, because they were not strangers. After the group entered the house, the maid immediately pointed her finger at Lu Li, assuring her that it was him. The guy saw this woman for the first time in his life and couldn't understand what she wanted from him. The maid assured him that she had seen him the previous night and insisted that he be arrested immediately. But everyone present looked at her as if she were a fool. One of the investigators tried to calm the miss, assuring her that they would not let anyone harm her. The president was annoyed by all these problems. He asked Xiao to take Lu Li to the guild and leave everything else to them. As she left, the girl asked the white-haired man if he really killed Shu Hu. She didn't think so, because if the killer was that stupid, he wouldn't be able to pull off something so big. After they left, the fat man asked the president if Lu Li was still under suspicion. In response, the man asked his colleague if he didn't think the whole story was a bit strange. It could be said without a doubt that all the evidence found pointed only to the white-haired man. The men thought it might be a conspiracy, as if someone was deliberately trying to frame Lu Li. While lighting a cigarette, Ma thought about who this white-faced guy was, that he was always the center of attention. Even Fen Yuzhai's special puppet didn't work on him. He wondered what would happen next to this child that Qiando had pulled from the ruins several years ago. The house where the murder occurred was surrounded by police officers and black cars. In one of them sat two men, watching everything that was happening carefully. One of them asked his partner if he was sure if Lu Li was the child that Qianda had carried out of the ruins. The green-eyed man didn't really believe it, but he still admitted that there weren't many people in the new generation that Master Fen could pay attention to. The headless head of the Zhu Corporation drags a subordinate behind him, whom he instructed to get rid of Lu Li. He went into one of the rooms and threw the poor man onto the floor where other murdered men lay. Other subordinates realized that something had happened inside, and they needed to save the others as soon as possible. But upon entering the premises of the house, an incredible terror permeated the men from head to toe. While the blue magic was spreading to everyone, the boss asked them to take their time and get the compass first. But when the men got it, they saw that it was out of order and showing nothing. The subordinates couldn't understand how this was even possible. The course of events is transferred to a building shrouded in moonlight, where the headquarters of the Urine Guild is located. The president sent Lu Li to the interrogation room to get more information. The investigator questioned the man, who claimed he was not guilty, even though all the evidence pointed to him. The interrogation had already lasted 3 hours, and the boy had told them everything he knew, and at the end he advised them to stay away from the mansion, especially after midnight, if they didn't want to put themselves in danger. The investigator took this as a threat and asked Lu Li if he really thought they were afraid. The guild was created specifically for criminals, and there were enough prisons for everyone. Before that, the guy said that this mansion was designed to kill people, so the detectives asked if he had any evidence. Li had no evidence, but he sensed a threat as soon as he arrived at the scene, so he admitted it was just intuition. The president was watching this interrogation. He noticed that this guy was very intelligent and talented. The man doubted whether they were really looking at a high school student, because ordinary people would have been scared long ago, but he remained calm. But the fat man didn't think it was right to talk about Li's calm behavior now. He had another problem: how to explain everything to Xiao Moon. He didn't know how to make peace with her, and whether she would be able to forgive him. The president replied that it was none of his business, and the guy had to figure out how to fix things himself. In the middle of their conversation, a subordinate ran into the office to report that something had happened on the grounds of the mansion. Hoping that their comrades were alive, President Ma was going to go to help. He told the fat man to notify him that the interrogation should be ended immediately, and Lu Li should be transported to the mansion. Shortly before, Xiao Moon and 2 other guild members entered the mansion grounds. They noticed that the blue fog was getting thicker. The girl told them not to stop and to follow her. Then the companions heard a human figure nearby start running straight towards the building. But Xiao Moon wasn't going to let the fugitive go so easily. She turned around and started running after him. His comrades only managed to see the girl rush after him, but they themselves remained standing aside. The partner wanted to go to help Miss Xiao Moon, but her friend forbade her to go any further. He did this because he didn't like the inscription on the gate that was the entrance to the estate. It said Qin, so there was a high probability that a curse with that name had been placed on this place. The guild members knew that Miss Xiao Moon was strong enough to take care of herself, so they should be worried about their own safety right now. They didn't realize that they were almost trapped by the enemy. Besides, the compass needle went crazy at this point. The guy with the glasses told his partner to breathe more slowly and try to talk less. This blue mist was made up of Shu's ghosts, and if the guild members inhaled it, it could cause hallucinations. They had about 5 minutes to get out of there. They argued over this decision because their partner didn't want to agree to it. At that moment, the wooden chutes reached their feet. The friends thought that an evil spirit had also taken up residence in the tree. The guy with glasses ordered Jung Jing to burn the wood immediately. The girl understood what needed to be done without his orders, and in the next moment, she burned the branches surrounding them. After Jung Jing completed the task and looked at her friend, she was extremely scared. He was holding his own head in his right hand without even realizing it. It scared them both to death. Jing Jing didn't understand how this was possible. The guy had no head, but he was somehow alive. These were hallucinations, so the girl asked her friend to quickly find a way to get out of there. If they didn't manage to do it within an hour, then he would really be left without a brain. At this time, Xiao Moon finally managed to catch up with the headless fugitive. She aimed her fist at him and was about to attack. The girl managed to do this, and his body was thrown back several meters. After that, Xiaozi's head rolled to Xiao Moon's feet, and judging by his expression, something truly terrible had happened. The girl looked at the estate, at the entrance to which several lamps were burning with green light. That's where the fugitive went, so most likely his lair was somewhere in the building. Xiao Moon wasn't going to miss such a chance, so she went after the headless body without hesitation. After the girl entered, the entrance to the estate closed, and the magic that poured from the door meant that a curse had been placed on him as well. President Ma quickly arrived at the scene and immediately asked about the current situation. The subordinate added that their two squads had lost contact with each other, and the captain asked him to stay and contact headquarters. Lu Li gazed at the cursed estate while the president tried to find out what was happening with Xiao Moon, and learned that 5 minutes ago their team stopped sending signals. While they were talking, they didn't even notice the blonde man jumping over the gate to get into the estate. He reminded them that he had already told them not to approach this place, but the guild members had not listened to him. The guild members tried to stop him with persuasion, since they had not yet thought out a plan of action, but he did not listen. The president thought that if Li was so confident in his abilities and could save everyone, then let him go, and they should just wait. He saw no reason to hurry, because he would take responsibility for everything that happened if the boy didn't return in 3 hours, and then they would go inside. When Li headed towards the estate, he was immediately surrounded by tree branches on all sides. The guy felt that compared to what it was during the day, the atmosphere had become much worse. To clear the way, he used his lightning technique and tried to fight off the wooden shackles. However, after several attempts, Lu Li realized that even the element of thunder could not harm the curse. He also concluded that the tree had absorbed all 5 basic elements, which meant that the Qin spell had been used here. The spell creates an illusory field that is difficult to escape from, seemingly absorbing all your strength. To break it, you will need the element of fire. But without the yellow talisman, the boy could not light a fire, and Genjin's art was beyond his control. So Li realized that he would have to use the fish to change his aura and merge with the world of illusion. He hoped that this time the fee for their help would not be too high, and began building the water creatures. The merger with the world of illusion was successfully completed, and Li even lost his sense of anxiety. Then he saw a tree in front of him, from the branches of which several people were hanging. Tree roots were punching holes in their heads, sucking out all their life force. As he got closer, Lu Li saw a seal attached to the trunk, which was the talisman of the god of thunder. No matter how you looked at it, it looked like the guy's master methods. He assumed that this house might be somehow connected to him, or it was all just a coincidence. Li bit his finger to offer blood as a sacrifice to the god of thunder and break the seal. After that, the white-haired man stretched his hand forward and resolutely placed his hand against the tree. As a result of this movement, a blue mist began to envelop the entire tree structure, and Li headed further towards the estate. The president knew that just after midnight came the most terrible time, when darkness gained its greatest power. The fat man happily announced that he had managed to find information about this house on the internet. The estate was built in 2003, that is, 19 years ago. There used to be a cemetery here, but a similar incident occurred as now. Only then the elders of their guild dealt with it. Lichiende was also mentioned there. The president asked the fat man if he was sure that this was the old man they needed. It all seemed very strange, because this estate is already 19 years old, and everything happened just now. The fat man guessed that all this could have been specially arranged. The president praised him for the fact that sometimes the boy had smart thoughts. The course of events returns to the estate. A headless man suddenly jumps out of the bushes. His body fell to the ground and landed right in front of Lu Li's feet, who had just tried to dispel the illusion. The man's body was followed by his partner, Zheng Jing, who threw his head at him with a swing. The guy with glasses was unhappy that she was throwing him around like a volleyball. Lu Li used his lightning technique and in the next moment grabbed the guild member's head in his hand. After a furious blow, he let go of her, and she, frightened, fell to the ground. Jengjing couldn't understand what had just happened, as her partner had returned to normal. Lu Li asked the girl if she was okay, but she didn't believe that it was a blonde in front of her and thought it was another hallucination. The girl's partner was glad that his head was back to normal, and also reprimanded the guy that he should have been in the interrogation room. But Lu Li didn't listen to him, because now his attention was drawn to the incredible energy emanating from Zheng Jing's body. She had pure, fiery yang energy, as she was a fire conjurer who conquered the West. This was the guy's chance to break the seal. He walked closer and grabbed Zheng's hand and asked if she would mind borrowing some. The man in glasses was angered by this move. He warned Lu Li that if he hurt his partner, he should prepare for the worst. The white-haired man gave him a cold look and told him to shut up if he didn't want to die. Lu Li injured the girl's finger to borrow some fire energy from her to break the spell seal. The guild member displeasedly asked the white-haired man what he needed her power for. He was unhappy with this reaction, as he had only taken a little. This answer did not satisfy Zheng Jing at all, because she knew that the guy was strong enough and could count on it. He folded 2 fingers in front of him, hoping that the guild member's strength would be enough to break that seal. Symbols of the element of fire appeared before his hand, and Li asked for the red flame to light their path. After that, a hot wind blew around. The guy with glasses didn't understand where it came from. The shocked guild members realized that Li was using a cleansing flame that burned away evil spirits but did not harm plants and trees, but this technique was thought to be long lost. The fog around the house cleared, and the blonde warned that the estate was most likely alive, and they wouldn't be able to get out if they went in there. The comrades didn't know what to do now, since Captain Xiaomoon had already been there for a long time. Li said that all they had to do was go in and find out. They had only 2 options. The first, they stand here and don't move, regardless of any sounds and visions. The second, they go inside with the guy. However, Li warned the guild members that if they went with him and something happened, he would not be able to protect them. When the white-haired man started heading for the door, Zheng Jing asked him to wait for her, because she didn't say she didn't want to go. At this time, Captain Xiaomoon finally reached the thieves' den and began to fight against them. They attacked first, grabbing the girl's neck by the hair, and began to strangle her. She tried to break free, pulling him away. Xiao managed to do this. She tore the letter and pulled it towards her with considerable force. As a result, her rival's head got stuck in the beams, and pulling harder, the guild member destroyed them with it. Xiao clenched her fist and hit the enemy's head with incredible force, after which it shattered into small particles. The satisfied girl sat down on the beam and told her enemies to call the chief here, because they still couldn't match her in strength. However, the girl's request was not fulfilled. Instead, an army of walking corpses was sent against her. Xiao didn't like it happening again, so she had no choice but to deal with them all. The guild members stood on her hands and knees, kicking away any corpses that dared to approach her. However, she immediately noticed that the damage she inflicted on them had no effect. The spirits regenerated instantly. Xiaomoon wasn't going to give up so easily. She pounced on her enemies with another attack. But the girl immediately had to return to her place because dangerous magic was approaching her direction, Shai immediately understood the source of the danger. The spirits were imbued with yin energy. It remained a mystery where it came from. More spirits began to gather behind her, and those that the girl had wounded before had already regenerated. But the worst thing was that after all the attacks that should have weakened the corpses, they actually became even stronger. Meanwhile, on the balcony of one of the high-rise buildings, two suspicious people were watching all the commotion. The woman took off her cursed mask and said that little brother Lu Li really did not disappoint them. The partner asked if she thought those bastards would be able to break through the seal, because if they got to the gate of death, they would most likely die there. However, the woman thought it was wonderful, because if Lu Li died, they would get a reward for his head, and if not, the boy would help them break through. They would still be able to get what they wanted. But the man believed that one should not underestimate others, because Juran had sensed something and was now extremely cautious. The thief took the binoculars to look at the building. She saw no reason to worry, because by the time the guild found them, it would be too late. Other subordinates of Shu's company also reached the estate, and it was clear that they did not know what to do. At this time, Xiao Moon stubbornly did not give up, and continued to resist the walking corpses. She crushed their bodies one by one, hoping that it might work in her favor after all. However, this made no sense, as the enemies instantly regenerated, restoring lost limbs. Xiao understood what their immortality was. They absorb the girl's energy and become stronger because of it. The guild member felt that things were bad, and she couldn't handle all the enemies alone. Just at that moment, Lu Li flew to her aid, ordering the girl to get out of the way. He used the wind trigram, an ability of one of the fish sealed within his body. In an instant, the boy left all his enemies behind, cutting their bodies into pieces. Xiao Moon smugly admitted that this attack was not bad, although not as cool as hers, but also not bad. Then the girl warned that you shouldn't be too happy, because these monsters are resurrected and become stronger every time. To Li, they were just a few evil spirits tied to the gates of death. He asked to be left with him. One day, when the boy was worried about not having enough food for his fish, someone left them near his house. But now, whether the little ones would be able to eat depended only on themselves. The young man folded his fingers and began to summon his spirits. The next moment, they were released and immediately devoured the energy of the walking corpses. The guild members were shocked to see that the boy had dealt with all his enemies with one blow. Shai was surprised, because she didn't know Li was capable of such a thing. She didn't even feel that he had such a strong aura, and could only guess what else he was hiding. Having defeated the spirits, the white-haired man announced in a calm voice that the battle with them was over. The guildmates rushed to Xiao Moon, incredibly happy that the girl was okay. Looking at his hand, Li thought about how his fish were becoming increasingly picky about their food. The comrades admitted that the white-haired man was stronger than Xiao Moon, and the girl, disappointed, asked them to shut up. Lu Li looked back at them and said that they should definitely go back to everyone else. The guild members didn't like the way the guy looked down on them, but in truth, he just didn't want to hurt them. After these words, the blond man put all his strength into his fist and aimed it at the floor below him. A huge stream of dark energy appeared before the comrades, causing them to freeze in place. Looking at it with horror, they could not even imagine where such a powerful evil spirit had come from. And they were also shocked by the fact that it was this white-haired guy who managed to discover her. President Ma immediately became wary, realizing that he had deeply underestimated Lu Li, as he had exceeded all his expectations. The woman on the roof informed her partner that what they needed had already been found, so they should join in the fun too. The old man was impressed by the boy's abilities and said to leave everything else to him. What Lu Li discovered before him shocked him incredibly. There was a coffin in the ground, wrapped in a chain and surrounded by seals. This spectacle was watched from under the rubble by the headless man, whom Xiao Moon had previously been chasing. Shocked, Zheng Jing immediately guessed who this body belonged to: the late chairman of the Shu Corporation. Li, with one hand shackled, instantly became alert and prepared for battle. When the headless man came at him, the boy grabbed the chain to break it. Pointing his new weapon at the enemy, he shouted at the top of his voice to his comrades to flee the battlefield. Lu Li knocked Master Shu to the floor and said that he wanted to know who this joker was. The headless body, pinned by the white-haired man's leg, tried to break free, so it moved its arms forward. Unexpectedly for everyone, another person arrived at the scene of the battle and headed towards Lu Li. Noticing this, Xiao Moon tried to warn the white-haired boy about the danger. But it was too late. Lu Li did not have time to react to the enemy's unexpected attack from behind. The boy was hit by an instant impact and the floor fell, sending pieces of it flying around. The enemy was disappointed that everything went so easily, and he immediately defeated Lu Li. Xiao Moon wanted to rush to his aid, but someone's female hand touched her shoulder. It was the same girl who had been sitting on the high-rise building. She had told the guild member not to go there, or she would die. Xiao Moon was frightened by the woman's unexpected appearance and asked where she came from. The old man was disappointed by the boy's weakness and continued to beat him, ordering him to get up. He incredibly liked the expression on the white-haired man's face as he looked at him. The man remembered the old thief Chenda, who probably could not have imagined that such a grimace would appear on his student's face. He swung his fist towards Lu Li to punch her already pitiful face once more. With this attack, the man threw the boy aside, allowing the guild members to intercept his body. Xiao Moon noticed that the president took advantage of this opportunity and took Lu Li away from him. He carried the boy away to a slightly safer place, where the fat man was heading. Lu Li said in a barely audible voice that he could have been saved faster. Ma reprimanded that these wounds were not that painful and ordered the fat man to heal them as soon as possible. The guy started the healing and promised that very soon Li would be as healthy as an ox. The boy's old wounds had not yet healed and new ones had already been added to them. Apparently, the devil was in no hurry to accept him into his infernal kingdom. The president recognized the attackers as Iron Fist, Huan Dong, and Witch, Mao Manchu. And judging by the fact that they came together, there was something important to them in that coffin. Huan Dong did not like the president's energy, calling him a disgusting fox. He guessed that this man was a descendant of the Ma family, and he headed towards him with fury. The president expressed his surprise that Huan was able to live to such an age, considering how long it takes for everything to reach him. Mao stopped her partner and said that the Ma family usually never participates in fights, especially not in killings, so she didn't want this rule to be broken. The woman politely asked the soldier if he couldn't just give the coffin to his sister. The president thought it was rude that he and Mao hadn't seen each other for so long, and she had only come to pick up the coffin. Huan synthesized a lump of energy and replied that it all depends on how much a person wants to live. The next moment, a tall gate of golden magic stretched out before the guild members. Xiao Moon moved from her spot and headed forward, trying to cross it, but the gravitational field prevented her. The weight of the bodies suddenly increased several times, and even the air became harder to breathe. When the magic dissipated, Mao and Huan were already on the roof of the building, holding the seized coffin in their hands. They brazenly thanked the guild members for their help, because without them, they would not have been able to find this treasure. Xiao wanted to rush to catch up with them, but the president stopped the girl, telling her to let them run. Huan finally told his opponents that they were quite interesting and would definitely meet again. The girl tried to argue with the boss, but they were distracted by the fat man, asking him to look at something. He reported that Lu Li had lost consciousness, but there seemed to be something in his body. It seemed to the boy that this was somehow preventing him from healing the white-haired man's wounds. President Ma leaned over to see what it was and found that the fat man was not mistaken, and Lu Li even had two such entities. He pointed his hand at the boy's face to find out what was inside him. But after that, he immediately suspended her, because he was shocked by what he saw. There he saw a real monster, and at that moment, Lu Li started to get up from the floor. The president lit a cigarette with a lighter, admitting that he had been in a hurry and almost burned himself. Mr. Shu really tried his best to get into Lu Li's body and was very angry now. The descendant of the Ma family, Ma Dong-kun from the northeast, apologized for the trouble, but he dared to ask the head of the corporation which road they had recently repaired. But the monster that had taken over Lu Li's body wanted only one thing: to eat all the energy that the president had given. Xiao immediately pounced on the monster in an effort to protect the president from it. This call was not in vain. With one blow, the guild member managed to crush his head into the ground. Comrade Xiao looked at this sight with embarrassment, and wanting to leave the place, told the girl that if it was all over, it was time for them to go. Leaving the place, the heroine smugly said that no ghost or demon could stand before her fist. The president praised his subordinate for his good work, but asked him not to say such things in front of his relatives. Before leaving, he instructed the fat man to take Lu Li to their young doctor. Perhaps she would find a way to help the boy. The day after the fight ended, the blond man found himself in the ghostly gate church. Upon waking up, he admitted that feeling alive was the best feeling in life. The boy thought he had had a very long sleep and looked away to see where he was. In the room, he saw a young girl standing at a table, grinding herbs for medicine. After the thieves left the battlefield, they were extremely disappointed with what they had come for, and the coffin they stole was completely empty. They really didn't like this prank. Master Fen and Sister Luo approached the couple. The girl said that they had not disappointed them. It was easy to guess from the expressions on the thieves' faces that they were not happy about such a visit. Before them was the same flirtatious woman who always gets everyone, and the old man who should have been in the pharmacy with his herbs. Demon Fen replied that he was not at the pharmacy right now, because he wanted to pick something up from them. Mao asked the gentleman if he had worked conscientiously on the 6 divisions technique, only to end up simply stealing their earnings. Yo replied that she was ready to take full responsibility because she was here too. Hearing about the equipment of the 6 divisions, Huan, without remorse, attacked the old man, demanding to show it. He landed and slammed his fist into the ground, but Fen managed to dodge much faster. Then, a human-sized creature, resembling a monster, began to emerge from the fog, laughing. This was the person who immediately attacked the angry Huan. Upon his appearance, with one blow, this man pushed the attacker's body straight into the ground, pinning him down with his hand. Huan covered his face with his hand, but he desperately shouted that they were mocking people. Yo, filming this on camera, told the man that he was very cute when he was angry and asked him to smile. Mao turned to the girl, asking her not to go too far, not to say that she had become one of the lords of the 10 temples of hell. And she also emphasized that the 5 elders were still watching the girl. The woman remembered the broken coffin and agreed to give it back. It didn't mean she was scared. She was just preparing for their next meeting. Yo noticed that her sister, as always, was making smart decisions. They took the wooden case with them and headed away from the scene of the clash. Juan wondered why they needed to lower the coffin, but his partner told him to forget it, because they had a more interesting show ahead. The course of events is transferred to the guild building, where the fat man and the guild president are having a conversation. The guy was unhappy that they had to waste their precious time waiting for Lee, who only came here when he wanted to. Ma noticed that his absence was the best option for them. This upset the fat man a little, and he also asked what the secret of that coffin was, which even the headquarters shuddered at. Everyone would soon find out about it anyway, so he was warned. The president told a legend about the ruins of Loeb Hur, when one person took out several things from there. Among them were 2 coffins, yin and yang. Yin kept the corpse, and yang kept the soul. Further information was in file number 10. The fat man bitterly realized that the file was related to Lu Li in Xiao. The president emphasized that they were simply following the instructions of the headquarters and did not ask questions. The course of events is transferred to the multi-story college building where the main character studies. The teacher entered the classroom and introduced everyone to the new student, Tao Xiaomoon. He assured them that the atmosphere in their group was very good. After that, he asked one student with dyed hair to wake up. The man angrily ordered Lu Li to get up while Xiao watched in embarrassment. The white-haired man raised his head from his desk, saying that he was awake. The guy noticed the commotion and asked what had happened. Lu Li looked ahead and saw Xiao Moon standing next to the teacher and asked the girl what she was doing there. The master asked the boy why he was going to college at all. He slept in class, dyed his hair, and didn't listen to him at all. The man ordered him to go back to his normal color the next day. To Xiao's laughter, the teacher assured her that although Li was not serious, his academic performance was always good, so if anything, she could safely turn to him if she had any questions. The girl sat down at the next desk and asked her new classmate to take care of her. The guy awkwardly agreed in return. The class ended and most of the students left the college as it was the last couple. Xiao asked Li if he was just going to go home. The boy apologized, saying that his mother was waiting for him there. However, he was stopped by the girl's question about whether he wanted to know where the master had disappeared to. She didn't know much about it, but she was sure there were those who knew more about it. She mentioned the coffin they found on the estate. Judging by their case, this coffin was buried by Master Chenda over 10 years ago. It contained a master of the Golden Castle technique, Chen Yuankuei. The most surprising thing was that the boy's grandfather appeared in the ancient city exactly the day before the practitioner disappeared, and then Chenda himself disappeared. Liu seemed to be something wrong here, because the golden lock technique was lost during the Ming dynasty and then suddenly appeared again. If the old man was involved in this, why did he take Chen Yuankuei away? The guild couldn't find the missing man, but they were able to try to find his grandson. Tao asked the boy if he happened to know his name. It was obvious that this information was needed by the girl, and her guild, or President Ma. Xiao advised him not to give up, because she had something else for him. She took the phone and held it out to the guy's face. Li tried to make out what was on the screen, while the girl reported that the coffin they found was only one part. The other had been taken to the ancient city where Chen Yuankuei lived. On Xiao Moon's phone screen, there was a picture of Mingjin, the city they were talking about. So the girl directly asked whether Li wanted to visit this mysterious place with them or not. Two lovers sat under red lanterns and a shower of red roses. Love had no beginning or end. The living can die, and the dead can live. In this world, only those who are born but cannot live, and those who are dead but cannot be resurrected, are not protected by God. It was for this reason that all these people gathered in the building where the ceremony for the lovers was being held. The guests, expressing their respect, finally waited for the bride to be ready. They were unhappy with such a long wait and asked to start everything faster. The woman accompanying the bride began to remove the scarf from her face in fear. The cloth fell to the floor, and the dead couple collided with their heads. Upon seeing the bride's true face, one of the guests was extremely frightened. But the other man ordered him to be quiet and not to disturb his young wife. He turned to the higher powers and asked for permission to tie the knot between Dushan and Zishan. They were to meet in another world and continue their journey together. Worshipping the Son of Heaven and the holy goddess of love, Aphrodite, he ordered his request to be fulfilled and affixed a seal to the bride's face. The man felt relieved that everything had not gone as badly as expected. Another person present at the ceremony turned to him and reproached him for having asked him many times not to be underfoot. He told his subordinate that if he saw something scary, he should act as if nothing had happened. The subordinate, embarrassed, promised that it would never happen again. A group of men, 2 by 2, supporting the shoulders of the corpses, led them to a small fire. They hung the bodies of the young people above it and asked the fire to open the way for them to the gates of paradise, expressing their blessing. The master of ceremonies ordered the others to tie a red thread on their hands as a sign that Zishan had become Dushan's legal wife. Having placed the dead in the coffin, the sorcerer said that from now on they were husband and wife. Finally, he ordered the Yin warriors to watch over their journey to the world of the dead. The man finished reciting the spell and affixed a sacred seal to the closed wooden tomb. He ordered his subordinates to quickly close the coffin, and they began to mold other seals and nail it to the coffin. In one of the rooms, a man was praying for his son. Today he had arranged a wedding for him, hoping that now he would not be lonely. The father wanted the boy to live a good life, at least in the afterlife. That was all he could do for him. The old man finished talking to his son, picked up the stick he was leaning on, and left the room. A group of men carried a huge wooden coffin as the wedding ceremony continued. The conjurer wrapped a seal around a wooden stick, which was to become a talisman for the young people and help them on their journey. He said that the Yin warriors had come here to show them the way forward. The man stuck the talisman into the ground and set fire to its tip, from which a thin stream of smoke rose. The fact that the smoke had no color was a good sign. It meant it was safe to continue. The subordinates behind were ordered to carry the coffin faster, but they suddenly stopped. Looking back, the men understood why they had been unable to advance further. The reason was that the color of the smoke from the mascot had changed to neon green, which was a bad sign. The bride became a walking ghost, and with one blow killed all the people carrying her coffin. The men were frightened by what they saw and immediately began to run in different directions in the hope of saving themselves. In an angry tone, the ghost screamed at the top of her voice to be turned back. The dead bride directed her attack at the caster and severed the blood vessels in his neck. He fell to his knees and clutched his throat, trying to stop the bleeding. The merciless ghost considered the caster to be the culprit of what happened to her. Out of nowhere, another man appeared, bending over the poor man, saying that he had heard that they were still searching. The stranger did not know whether the master had told the spellcaster, but he knew who he was. And then he warned him to be prepared to be trampled to death in any case. The thief mercilessly trampled on the man's head, and blood spattered the air. And as a result, these words were the last that the caster heard before his death. After that, the resurrected bride and the unknown man left the scene of the bloody massacre. Events return to the college classroom, where Xiao Moon and Lu Li are now studying together. The guy asked his classmate why he always thought she and the Jurin Guild were up to something. Xiao was upset that this was so obvious, so she began to seek dialogue between her and the president. When she found it, Lu Li instantly snatched the girl's phone from her hands to see everything with his own eyes. There he learned that the president had asked him to say that in that city, the young man would find answers to two main questions: whether his Chende was alive or what was the cause of his death. The guy was completely satisfied with what he read, and he returned the phone. Then he told Xiao that it was time for them to leave, because tomorrow was a day off, and he just asked for help with the travel expenses. The girl looked out of the audience and happily announced that they would have no problems with this. The story is transferred to the country's capital, to the sunlit courtyard of Tao Xiaomun's family. The grandfather shared with his wife the experiences he can't stop thinking about. He disagrees with his granddaughter and this dead child from the Li Qiande family. But then he thought that maybe it really wasn't worth meddling in young people's affairs, but the old woman was worried that the boy and their girl were dating. Grandpa said it was nonsense, because they were just classmates, and there was no point in thinking about it. The woman was angry if he really meant that she shouldn't worry about her granddaughter. She reproached them for thinking that the old man didn't care at all about their blood. Grandpa replied that that wasn't true at all. He did care a lot. It was just that they were over 100 years old. These words angered the woman even more, and she swung her stick at the man because she understood them as a hint that she was already very old. Even after getting hit on the back of the head, he said that she would forever be the youngest and most beautiful to him. Sobbing from a new bruise, the grandfather admitted that his wife's blow was, as always, beautiful. At this time, Xiao Moon and Lu Li, surrounded by suspicious plates, arrived in the mysterious city of Mingjin. It was very quiet there, because many shops had been forced to close during the ghostly commotion. Finding a hotel to stay in will be a difficult task because even a navigator can show you the wrong way. On the way, they came across an establishment called the Eight-Door Tavern. It was unlikely that the other companions would have found it, so they decided to stop there. Upon entering, Xiao assumed that the street was so quiet because everyone had gathered there to have a party. However, Li didn't think so, as he felt a strange aura. He suggested that the tables packed with customers could be just another illusion. The owner of the tavern welcomed the arriving guests, informing them that they could stay at their establishment for a rest. Lu Li decided to check if magic was involved in this place and ordered Yin's eye to open. Friends asked if there was a free room in this city. The host replied that there was one suite left and asked the guests to go upstairs. The man said that the dining room was on the first floor and the rooms were on the second. Although their building was not that big, they had everything they needed. Liu couldn't figure out if it was really an illusion, because everything looked completely normal. But he knew that there was something really wrong with this place. The owner boasted that his hotel in Santong was cleaner, but this one was considered the best in the entire city. While Li was looking around the room, the man suggested to Xiao that a bunch of girls were running after the guy. The white-haired man ran his hand over the table and found that there was a lot of dust on it. This meant that no one had lived in the room for a long time, and the owner was lying. Li noticed that the whole place was so eerie, but only one man was so joyful. He wondered why. The interlocutor replied that just recently, old Ju's family insisted on a marriage ceremony for their deceased son. Everything was fine now, although the day before yesterday they had a sign hanging, and he even felt a little sorry. The owner assured them that they shouldn't worry about the fact that it was dirty, and that they would definitely clean it up. But he emphasized that the friends definitely wouldn't find a better hotel. He, Lu Satun, is a descendant of the Heavenly Master in the 108th generation. As long as the man wears the talisman, no ghost or demon dares to approach him. The owner took a piece of paper out of his pocket and told his friends to contemplate the beauty of a 1,000-year-old treasure. Lu Li was embarrassed by the stupidity of all the above and did not believe a single word this man said. He pointed with his index finger to a spot near the table where an unopened condom and an obscene photo lay. The owner apologized for the sight, saying he was very ashamed that customers had to see it. He tried to sell Xiao his Heavenly Master talisman, which he had inherited from his ancestors, at a 10% discount. The girl had never even heard of such a thing. Li snatched the piece of paper from the manager's hands and said that his master would cry if he saw him draw this fake. Moreover, celestial masters only exist up to the 64th generation. Then a logical question arose, to which the old man did not know how to answer. Where did his 108th come from? The man replied eerily that a few days ago, a gentleman had visited them who claimed to be a master of yin and yang, and his aura was similar to the boy's. However, now he was gone too. Louis remembered that yin and yang was the second name for the art of the Golden Castle, but he didn't understand why the host suddenly brought it up. The guy looked at Xiao Moon with the thought that it would be better to find this master first. It would be much better than looking for a needle in a haystack. The girl took the hint and asked the host if he knew where the man was now. If so, then let him tell them where he had gone. Shaking his hands, the man promised to tell them everything on one condition: if they bought his talisman. They agreed to this deal. The owner assumed that the blonde would have a great future. When the man was young, girls literally hung around his neck, but then he didn't know how to appreciate what he had. After these words, the owner led his friends to the outskirts of his hotel, and where an old woman lived, the mother of the guy for whom the wedding ceremony was being held. They came to the Yang Shan family home and learned that the parents had bought a female corpse for their son, without even knowing where the body came from or how it died. Li asked the old woman if the talisman on the door of the house was related to Master Huan Xian. The woman confirmed his suspicions, saying that he was a good-natured man, but she felt sorry for him. She didn't even have time to thank him when the fat man left. The boy was alarmed by the words about the fat master. He asked if his surname was Lu, and if he was the owner of the Eight Gates Hotel. The lady didn't think it was that tavern, but the man's last name was definitely Lu. The comrades were very surprised to hear that the woman knew all the hotels in the city, but was hearing about the Inn of the Eight Gates for the first time. The mother started crying because she had been alone for over 30 years. She thought she would find a new family here and that someone would be with her until the very end. But in the end, it didn't work out that way. Xiao Moon politely apologized and offered her condolences for the loss of her son. Finally, she told the lady to take care of herself. Li knew that the trade in corpses was illegal in itself, and even if a person was not involved in it, he could not escape criminal liability, so the best solution would be to forget about what he had heard. Then the boy asked Xiao Moon if, besides the official Jurin Guild, there were others. The friend didn't think he would ask her such a question, and thought it was cool that Li had guessed it himself. The white-haired man asked in frustration if the girl had any adequate cockroaches in her head, and why she couldn't be at least a little normal. But Jiao thought that guys liked stupid girls. The girl asked what exactly the boy was interested in. Li noticed that the handwriting on the talisman they had bought was similar to the one hanging on the door, which meant that they had been made by the same person. Shai was angry that they had been tricked and was going to go talk to the old lady again. But the guy didn't think it was as simple as she thought. It had been several days since the incident, and besides, Lu Santun had not done so with the intention of cheating, so the friends decided to respect old age. Li asked where the other guildmates were, as two of them wouldn't be enough. Xiao said that the president had gone to the headquarters to evacuate people, and the fat man and the others were taking care of some business, so she was allowed to go first. The boy was surprised to hear what Ma was up to. It meant that things were even worse than he had thought. After some thought, Li decided that they needed to get back to the hotel as soon as possible. Zhao was unhappy that he didn't even finish. When the friends returned to the tavern, they discovered that he was no longer where they had found him. Lai remembered how the old lady had said before that there was no such hotel in the city. The friends heard the sound of a bell nearby, and a male voice saying, "Shadows bypass the light. The living bypass death." Looking down the road, Lee saw paper pallbearers carrying a wooden coffin on their shoulders. The guy remembered that a collision with paper people can occur for two reasons. They are either carrying a person or following someone's soul. Fortunately, the leader of this company was a human, not a ghost. Otherwise, things would have been much more serious. Looking at the craftsman's clothes, one could conclude that he was a local. His old man had once told the boy about this. Lai recalled his words that master scribes, who appeared as early as the Tang dynasty, had a special ability to use paper to revive the dead. Then the boy said that he would revive Lu Dongbin and Zhang Daolin so that they would take care of everything themselves. Then we could not study Taoism and let the sages do everything. Louis recalled how he received a strong slap from his master Chenda for these words. The old man was very unhappy that the little boy had the audacity to think such a thing. When the master came closer, he told Li that trouble was approaching, misfortunes would soon come, and that the boy should not trust people. He watched their ceremony, trying to understand the meaning of the words he had just heard. Xiao also heard these words, but she didn't understand why exactly now and what trouble the master was talking about. Li didn't know either, and, looking at his watch, emphasized that they didn't have much time left until 9 o'clock in the evening. Xiao Moon expressed her anger at that old woman and Lu Santun, threatening to burn down his tavern. The girl's words about the fire prompted Li to think about what might be related to this whole situation. Assuming that the 8 doors could be the 8 gates of Qimen, it is now no wonder that the place looked so familiar. Openness, peace, life, death, pain, limitation, anxiety. All of these were related to the 8 gates of Qimen. There were certain similarities with this in the Shuhu estate, so it is not surprising that the Taoist eye of Li does not work. This whole situation seemed very confusing, and that old Lu Santun seemed extremely suspicious. The story moves to a hut located in a dark forest where 2 boys have gathered. The gamer scolded his brother Lian for causing such a commotion, and now everyone was looking for him. Even the authorities might show up, and then he would have to be left alone. The guy again emphasized that the little one should not meddle in other people's affairs, because after 9 hours there would be his only chance to survive. So he couldn't tell anyone about it. He didn't want to lose his only friend. Assuming that everything was not so bad, the boy wanted to suggest another scenario, but Lian didn't even want to listen to him, because if his assumption had worked, they wouldn't be here now. Like his brother, the gamer didn't particularly trust the authorities, but he still hoped that there was one person who could help them. Lee noticed that all this time, a black crow was sitting above them on the poles that distributed electricity. When he said this out loud, the crow flew away abruptly, which could mean that they were being followed. The friends knew they couldn't waste time, and chased in the direction the bird was flying. The people watching them now knew that President Ma had indeed sent someone to this place, especially since these faces were already familiar to them. This was the same couple that stole the coffin from Shu Hu's estate. They were following them with the help of a crow. Mao was unhappy about the lack of information, because the Golden Castle technique, which had struck fear throughout the Ming dynasty, had been lost more than 600 years ago. But no one had ever realized that it still existed. As she released the crow, the girl thought, if this technique were so simple, Li Jianda wouldn't have to seal the gate and take some old man with him. Huan assumed that the old thief Fen would turn out to be dishonest and use them as cannon fodder again. That witch believed that no matter what the old man's goals were, the Golden Castle's equipment should not fall into the wrong hands, and if they did a good job, the 5 elders would definitely side with them. Lu used the wind technique ability to track where the crow that was following them had gone, and as a result, in a few seconds, he reached the place where the Iron Fist, Huan, and the witch Mao were hiding. The girl was unhappy that they had been spotted so quickly and told her partner to leave and not waste time here. Li was not going to let them escape and swung his hand using a lightning bolt. He approached the old man and aimed a blow at his body, but he stopped his technique with just one palm. The boy instantly jumped back, realizing that his lightning strike had been blocked. Huan was annoyed by this behavior. He said that if they didn't need Lu Li, he would have finished him off a long time ago. His partner asked him to calm down and not waste his time, because it was not in their interest to fight right now. So Lu Li just watched as the couple started to retreat, running away from him. Xiao finally reached the scene, asked the guy if he was okay, and the blonde informed his partner that these were the same people who stole the coffin from them. The girl wondered if that sly woman had been here, and if they had brought the coffin with them. Meanwhile, little Lu ran through them, with only 13 minutes left. He couldn't figure out where Southeast was, and was afraid he might be late. The guy suddenly stopped, noticing that Lu Li was standing nearby with some woman. Xiao was surprised that her partner also recognized this little guy, who was not very happy about their meeting. He thought that the girl next to Li looked a lot like an official, and didn't understand how he could have contacted her at all. The gamer said he wanted to live and apologized that he didn't have time to play with them and continued running. But the blonde immediately chased after him. The guy was unhappy that the little guy had already gone somewhere without even having a proper conversation. Lu didn't want Li to get in his way, and planted a tree instead to escape faster. Then he saw the boy jump onto the building and was already on the other side of it. Xiao Moon instantly moved from her spot and was about to run after the little snorer. Lu Li guessed that his partner was using the air ladder technique. Meanwhile, the old lady turned to her deceased husband, Vajradhara, saying that he should know that the power of God has neither beginning nor end. She continued that if a person lives with the idea of rebirth, their thoughts will be turned back, but they will not be able to enter the other world until they reach the point of rebirth. Then the woman heard an unknown man enter the room, saying that if you do bad things, God will not protect you. The old woman already knew too much, so he wasn't going to leave their family so easily. Lion asked if she dared to look Xiao Mei in the eye and tell her how she died, and ended up in the hands of the Chju family. The woman saw the ghost of the dead girl behind her and began to beg the Lord to save her. Another man looked out from another corner and asked the old woman if she really believed that God would help her. He approached Lian Qin with the assumption that the boy was probably Chen Yunkui's grandson. The man folded his hands in front of him, introduced himself as Bai Wuchang, and said that he really wanted to be friends with him. Lion interrupted his remark, giving an unambiguous answer. He was not interested in the offer of friendship. The fact that the guy didn't even listen to the end irritated Bai, and he rushed at him with a knife in his right hand. The ghost, Xiaomei, came to the boy's defense. repelling his unexpected attack with one blow. The girl caught the sword with her bare hands. Everything turned out to be much more complicated than Bai thought. Lion told the man to pray that he would see the sun tomorrow, and that he was not interested in friendship with corpses. After that, he and Mei left the room, Bai angry with himself for underestimating the guy. He turned to another corner of the room and invited the one who was hiding to finally show himself. The stranger with the creepy aura thought it was funny that this boy had noticed him, but he was afraid that if he showed his face, Bai would immediately want to kill him. He shouted that the old woman was using them, but the boy ordered him to stop talking nonsense and take her away. Meanwhile, Xiao Moon almost managed to catch up with the little fugitive, who was starting to get worried about it. The girl was going to pounce on him and hit him so that he would finally stop. The boy barely managed to avoid her attack. He didn't expect them to be so fast. Lu Li also did not lag behind, and in a moment was standing right in front of the fallen gamer. While his comrades were chasing him, the boy managed to reach the Mina Theater. That was his destination. A young man began to approach the company, humming a song about the beginning of chaos, in which 5 directions were established, 3 of which were laid by the sun and the moon. He whispered about the truth of yin and yang, when the stars are spread out in the sky, and during the day the sky is filled with clouds. This song was very familiar to Lu Li, but he couldn't remember where he had heard it before. Titan approached the surprised boy, who seemed to recognize him and held out an apple. Liu remembered that Brother Lian had chased the man away and asked why he had come back again. He didn't like the exile's cheerful mood and what he was doing now. Hearing about Brother Lian, Lu Li realized that this boy had something to tell them. Before taking a bite of the apple, Liu reported that the city was cut off from the outside world. But yin and yang cannot be separated, so the living cannot leave and also cannot enter. He turned to his pursuers and asked if they wanted to see Brother Lian, and warned them that if they were not afraid of death, they could follow him. A couple of young men were watching them under one of the buildings. They saw that someone had broken in again and decided to just wait until they left. One of them felt goosebumps on his back and a ringing in his ears, and then he saw a scary ghost behind him. The ghost took over his body, and the poor man began to beg his partner for help. Other ghosts began to crawl towards him, and it looked like his brother wasn't going to help him. The guy started running away from the creepy place, apologizing that he couldn't help him. The poor man had a hard time realizing that his friend had left him alone, surrounded by ghosts. There was a ceremony taking place nearby, where the heroine announced that she had once died for Liu Lan, and today she was born for him. They were made for each other, and they both knew it. After that, the woman suggested not talking about it today, and just letting people and ghosts wander around until the time was right. A couple of thieves watched this spectacle and could not understand what this young lady was saying. Huan knew that everyone was gathered here for the sake of the Chen family's grandson, but the culprit was nowhere to be seen. He approached the organizers and asked what they wanted, that they demolish the poor building. The lady who was drinking green tea didn't like this inadequate idiot who had arrived and was shouting at the entire hall. She told the couple that if they couldn't appreciate Chinese culture, then they shouldn't have come here at all. Such insults from the woman's mouth angered Iron Fist, and he was about to attack her. The green tea connoisseur prepared to block the attacker's attack with her left foot. The next moment they were on the floor, where they began to fight each other in earnest. To help her comrade win with her magic, Witch Mouse summoned a huge snake. However, even this attack did not make the young lady flinch. She simply jumped on her head, avoiding a fatal outcome. The next moment, she jumped off the reptile and said that she could not imagine that the bar snakes were so huge. Mao was ashamed that the girl was so close to winning, but lost. The event organizer was furious that this old man dared to climb up to their guests. He moved in his direction, preparing to lecture the man for his behavior. But overconfidence was a fatal mistake for the guy, because he attacked the wrong opponent. Huandong threw him onto the wooden table with one punch, shattering it into pieces. Xiao Moon came to the young man's aid and told him not to pretend to be a hero with such meager skills. Along with her, Lu Li, Little Liu, and the exiled Titan also arrived at the scene. Shai was surprised to see that the headquarters had sent Shu Yang here. She had come with Erka, but the girl didn't understand who she was. Mao told them not to worry, and that they would meet her in heaven very soon. Huan turned to Lu Li, informing him that it was his old man who left the scar on his face. He couldn't just leave it like that, and all his life he dreamed of taking revenge for such humiliation. So Iron Fist decided to leave the retaliation to Li, even though the guy repelled his first attack. Huan was impressed that he could repel his attacks, but he also wasted no time after their last meeting. From among the dust of the destruction, the daredevil asked Li if he thought he could survive this time. Mao was also fighting and was going to use the audience as a snack for her snake. The reptile charged towards the girls, who were carefully avoiding its mouth. Yang understood that to deal with this giant, they needed to work together. But Xiao didn't even need to say it, because she was perfectly aware of it herself. The girls grouped together and attacked the snake together. Zhu Yang the upper jaw, and Tao Moon the lower. Liu knew that things would not end well, so he wanted to escape from this place as soon as possible. But Titan did not share his intentions. On the contrary, he enjoyed watching this show. The guy immediately paid for his words, getting hit from behind with a heel. Yang didn't like the two of them, just standing there watching. So she decided to get them into a fight and pushed Liu into the snake's mouth. So the boy was left with no choice but to escape this worthless situation. Liu used his magic, and as a result, a log ended up in the snake's mouth, instead of a small one. The boy's heart nearly jumped out of his chest. He was enraged by the audacity of that damned woman who had so simply pushed him. A man from a non-existent hotel approached him and exclaimed that this technique was very good, and asked if he could teach him how to do it. Unexpectedly for everyone, the building began to shake, and cement began to fall from its walls. This happened because Huan had just slammed Li's body into a brick wall near the stage. The man advised the young man to be more careful in his next life. He believed that the blonde man had taken the wrong side, and that was why he would be killed. Li didn't want to fight him and tried to negotiate, but the man didn't listen at all and started waving his fists. He remembered a childhood conversation with the old man about what to do if he encountered a very large and strong opponent. Then the grandfather reminded the boy of the 50-second hexagram. Lai remembered what it was, but thought it just helped him stay away from people. The grandfather thought the boy wasn't listening at all, so he explained. Each of the 64 hexagrams meant a phenomenon. Gen is a mountain, and when two mountains intersect, it's called Jian. It was like a burden on one's shoulders, and when a young man couldn't bear it, he had to learn to let go and not be heroic. Li understood this as simply giving up. But the old man explained displeasedly that letting go didn't mean surrendering. It meant defending instead of attacking, waiting and seeing what would happen, remaining motionless. It was no coincidence that just then Li remembered the phrase about these two immovable mountains on his shoulders. And as a result, the guy didn't attack. He listened to the advice and began to defend himself, stopping his opponent's hand. Lu Sutton was incredibly shocked by what he saw, because he remembered that he had already encountered something similar. He saw this technique, Gen, immovable as a mountain, in use by Master Tiende. The gamer was worried about Lu Li, because it's real suicide not to move when such a powerful attack is aimed at you. Lu Sutton told the boy to look more closely, and then everything should fall into place. The man asked Lu if he knew the saying, "Let it be as strong as the breeze on the mountaintop." While the moon shines brightly over the river, from the shocked expression on the boy's face, I realized that he had heard these lines before. The blonde grabbed his opponent's hand and said in a haughty tone that now it was his turn. Huan saw nothing great about Li being able to block his punch and still wished the guy dead. But the boy continued to defend himself smugly, saying that this was the end and victory was his. He remembered the master's words that there was no need to rush anywhere. One needed to be still as a mountain and calm as the earth. The boy didn't understand what to do if the enemy was also unyielding. The old man replied that you could attack a mountain with stones from another mountain. You just had to be patient and aim at one place. Lu Li clenched his palm into a fist and was about to strike while he had the right moment. His palm hit his opponent right in the stomach, crushing several ribs. Lu Santun noticed that the guy's strength had increased several times, and now he had every chance of winning. This technique looked familiar, and the man remembered its name, the Five Sacred Mountains technique. Liu heard about it for the first time and asked for an explanation. The master was disappointed and thought that he had just graduated from high school if he was asking such elementary things. Witch Mao understood that her partner was in a bad situation and ordered her snake not to let Wan Dong die and to help him quickly. Clasping his two hands together, the man shouted that he had accepted losing to the old scoundrel Xienda, but he was not going to lose to any young man for anything in his life. The blonde remembered his master's words in case his opponents counterattacked. Then he advised to become the Ghost of Everest, because if Li was not visible, there would be nowhere to attack. As a result, the blonde began to dodge each subsequent attack incredibly quickly. By doing this, he bought himself some time and wanted to finally give his enemy a proper rebuff. Huandong managed to dodge, and in its place only a hole with branching cracks on the floor remained. Li shouldn't have revealed his aura, and as a result, he fell into the trap that his opponent was preparing for him. Satan understood that things were bad, and the guy was now in danger, although he himself had recently said that he had every chance of winning. The man explained that Lu Li's technique is similar to the principle of lightning rods. The air connects to the ground through the soles of the feet, diverting all attacks from the outside world into the environment. It is difficult to move a mountain, but Satan believed that if it could be moved, it would fall. Once the aura is open, it can be easily manipulated. Their company was joined by Brother Lian, who disagreed with the opinion just expressed. He reprimanded that if the man knew about the techniques of the five sacred mountains, he should know that they were not only Taishan, Huangshan, and Hengshan. Satun was surprised and asked the young man to tell his name. With a satisfied expression on his face, the boy replied that his name was Lian Qin, anticipating the future reaction. After all, the young man was known as the grandson of Chen Yongkui, whom Li Qianda took with him. The giant snake, opening its mouth, rushed forward intending to eat its new prey. But the boy, using the Hengshan flying technique, managed to escape from under her jaws. The next moment, Lu Li found himself right above the head of his main rival, Huan Dong. The man covered his hands with sand, intending to protect himself from the blow the blonde was preparing for him. But this actually harmed him, as Huan was left without both palms and parts of his hands. The defeated old man knelt before Li. The young man asked where his arrogance had gone, and ordered him to get up and fight on. Looking at his lost limbs, Huan wondered how this was even possible. He had trained every day for 10 years, hardening his body and even testing poison on himself to become invincible. Iron Fist didn't understand why Master Qianda despised him, and now even his student did. After all, the man just wanted to prove that he wasn't a failure. Lai was not interested in the old man's past, but he knew one thing. Until the old man died, the young man would not be able to live in peace. Huandong began to beg for mercy, promising that if the boy did not kill him, then he would reveal the secret of this city. Looking at Li's crazy face, he said that there was also a hidden coffin in Mingjin. Mao still tried to save her friend and ordered her snake Xiaobao to eat the blonde. Huan already thought that Li was going to dodge and let the reptile devour the one who had just beaten him. However, his expectations were not fulfilled, because instead the boy was going to save both himself and his enemy. In gratitude for the blonde man listening to his words and not killing Huandong, he warned Li not to approach the tomb under any circumstances.